basically, we're farmers and we grow lettuce aquaponics and hydroponics, sorry. And what I just wanted to do was do a couple of experiments with your technology.
Explain to us what's the difference to those of us who don't know hydroponic and
Okay. Hydroponic is using chemicals because you're growing the plants in water, and hydroponic is using chemicals to add food and nutrients to the plants, and aquaponics is using fish to provide the nutrients. So the fish waste, basically the poo that the fish do, provides the nutrients for the plants. So I've got pictures later on in the presentation of our aquaponics system, and I can explain better how it all works.
Thank you very much.
So when we had a look at that, I was having a look to see whether we would need the Gans of nitrogen, and I was waiting for your presentations on the launch of the blueprints for agriculture, and you never mentioned the Gans of nitrogen at all regarding agriculture. So that got me wondering whether we actually needed that, and how the CO2 worked with the agriculture instead of using the nitrogen. So I did 3 different experiments based on that work, and I'll have the results there. Typically the nitrogen cycle works where we feed the fish some food, and then basically the waste from the fish ends up coming out as ammonia, and then with bacteria that converts to nitrites, and with different bacteria it converts to the nitrates. And the nitrates is what the plants absorb. Well, this is what we've been told, is that the plants absorb the nitrates. So that's your typical nitrogen cycle. You can explain the same in soils as well. It's the same cycle. I had a look at just basically the what's in the atmosphere, and this just shows you that nitrogen is argon CO2. So you can see nitrogen makes up a big component of our atmosphere. I just looked at basic chemistries to try and understand how the CO2 works with the nitrogen for the plants. So your nitrogen and oxygen are right next to each other on the periodic table. Your nitrogen having 14 and your oxygen is 16. So my thinking was, by adding the Gans of CO2 to the soils, are the plants absorbing the fuels? And so because the oxygen and nitrogen are very close together, are the plants recognizing the CO2 field as sort of nitrogen and using it that way? So it sort of started getting me thinking that maybe the plants are absorbing almost 80% of their nitrogen needs from the atmosphere and not from the ground, as we've always been told. So I had a look at a couple of your equations that you always use, and carbon dioxide, when you take the carbon and the oxygen, 2 oxygen, gives you a total of 44 field strength. So I had a look at various forms of nitrogen. So you get the nitrous oxide, so which has 2 nitrogen and 1 oxygen, and that also gives you a total of 44, which is identical to the CO2. I looked at nitrites, and that gave me a total of 46. So those 2 are very close to the carbon dioxide field strength, which makes me then wonder that are the plants absorbing, say, their nitrogen from the atmosphere and through the CO2, and that's how they're picking up their food. All right, this is our aquaponics system. Basically, in the background, you'll see a water tank there with a yellow strip around. That's about 12,000 liters of water there, and that's where our fish live. They're totally separate from our growing area. In front of that tank, you'll see there's 4 grow beds. They are about 400 millimeters deep and filled with water. And what happens is the water circulates from the fish tank into the first trough, and you see it goes to the second, and it just weaves its way third, fourth, and then we just pump it back to the fish tank. So this water is circulating continuously, and the fish are there to provide the ammonia and nitrites and nitrates for the plants to absorb. The close-up on one of the troughs here that I call is, because they're filled with water, we then just lay polystyrene rafts on top of the water, and then we plant our seedlings in little cups, and they just sit in the raft, and then the roots are able to sit in the water and absorb the food that way. So it's a very nice, efficient way of growing, very natural, because you can't put any pesticides on your lettuce, because whatever you do there will kill your fish. So it's a self-regulating system, very efficient. You're only using about 90% of water that one would normally use in the ground. All right. The first experiment I did was I took, we'd made a double-walled cup of the seawater Gans and CO2 Gans, and I just dropped in a packet of seeds in there for 5 days to see what effect those fields would have. They were seeds of kale, so we had seeded them on the 10th of February, and then we planted them into one of our systems on the 22nd of February, so sort of 12 days later from seeding. This one shows 19 days from seeding. Now the one on the left, we're showing the one that has been treated for the 5 days, and the one on the right was just our test sample, so that hadn't been treated. As of the 19 days, we could see that the treated sample had an extra leaf already. There were 3 leaves of your main stem, main leaves, whereas the other one still only had 2. On 21 days, just with the same plants as well, we noticed sort of a 4th leaf on that treated one, and then we had our 3rd leaf on our test plant. So they were slightly ahead at this stage. 27 days, the leaves look bigger, and then I think on the, so I took an overview picture where here's one of our whole rafts, and then on the left is the untreated, on the right was the treated seeds. And at this stage, they could generally see they were slightly bigger. It's difficult on the photo, but the color there was a lot greener at this stage. So there's definite difference. At 34 days, we're still seeing quite a difference between the two lots. And then we get to 44 days. This was last week. They're starting to even out now. We still see a slight difference where the treated ones are slightly bigger than the untreated ones at this stage. And then, so our observations with this one is that the first few weeks of growth, we had seen quite a difference. It seemed to give the seeds quite a good boost in that first period. The color was more vibrant. These were hybrid seeds, so I'll be interesting to see whether there's any changes in the plant structure as we grow. And I say at present there was only a slight difference between the treated and untreated. So we'll just have to continue monitoring, and we'll give feedback on how those grow and develop, especially when we start harvesting. And then this was planted in one of our systems where we had no plasma in the water. So that was our first experiment that we'd done. Our second one, we looked at trying to create a nice field environment around the plants, because our summertime here is very hot. So we wanted to try and create a nice field so the plants could grow. better and withstand the temperatures. So I created, on the left was some pipes, just 20 mil diameter pipes, which we had filled with a nanocoppered coil there. And then I'd made a mixture of gases where I'd used C-Gans, CH3 and CO2, and I placed that in the tube. I chose that mixture because the C-Gans, as it gives a lot of the minerals that the plants need. I wanted CH3 for the energy and then CO2 for sort of nitrogen, that give the effect of the nitrogen food for the plants. And on the right picture there, I just created a little black tube also filled with that mixture. So what I've done was I placed these on the raft. We had just seeded these ones, well, not seeded, but planted them in the system on the 19th of February. So I wanted to see whether that would have any effect on the surrounding lettuces that we were growing. This one, as I say, we planted on the 19th of February. During the whole growing period, we hadn't really noticed any difference, but we had messed up the experiment for ourselves because, as you'll see in experiment 3, we had also done something else to the water. So I think it negated the whole effect of this experiment with the pipes. So we'll have to redo that at another stage. Then the third experiment is where we got the most interesting results from. I had taken what I wanted to do was to try and then add fuels to the actual water that we use to see if there's any effects on the growth rate, pests, any effect on our fish that it might have. I'd used the same Gans mixture where it was 70% seawater Gans, 15% CO2 Gans and 15% CH3 Gans as a mixture, and just placed that into a sealed bottle. I then placed that bottle into our first trough, so that, as you can see with the picture on the left, this bottle is floating in the water, and it sort of ends up being about halfway down in the water level, and that was just sitting there sealed. So we had not added any Gans mixture to the water itself. And then the picture on the right, you'll see I've got my black pipes, and then where the arrow is basically where my orange bottle was placed into that trough. 3 days later, after we had planted the plants out, you can see the picture on the left there. The picture on the right was 8 days later on the growth of our lettuce. Here's just a comparison, just to keep in perspective. So the picture on the left is when we had planted our seedlings into the system. And then on the picture on the right was 13 days later. So we can see quite a lot of growth. And as you can see, that there's not much difference on the growth around our tubes and pipes, but at this stage. 18 days later on the right, that was on 7th of March. So we've had very good growth on that one. 25 days later, and as you can see, I took one of our rafts out, and you can just see on the picture on the right, our little orange bottle sticking out there. There's just a close-up of 25 days after we had put the lettuce into the system. You can see how wonderful the lettuce has grown, and you can see how just the water is, the bottle is just sitting in the water there. 28 days later, I just lifted up the raft there. You can see the polystyrene raft, and how the bottle and just the small amount of Gans basically was in the bottle. And then our very white root structure, which I'll talk about later, which was the main effects that we had really come across. Just to give you some background as to why we sort of looked at this experiment is because we had gone through a very, very hot summer, and the nighttime temperatures stayed at around 20, so our water didn't really cool down, and our water system then stays stayed at about 26 to 29 degrees Celsius, even during the day and at night. And this high water temperature, what it does to the root structure of the plants is that it makes them very fragile. The roots turn brown. If you touch them, they'll just disintegrate and die off. And what this does is it causes the lettuce to grow very slowly. It has no weight to the leaf structure as well. It's very thin. Some of the lettuce is very stunted, and some of it will go to early bolting. So the summer's was quite horrific for us. And then it would take 6 to 7 weeks once we had planted lettuce into the system for us to even be able to harvest something that we could use. So this experiment turned out to be quite a big surprise for us. We weren't expecting the results. Let me just show you here on the roots. I've taken some lettuce from our different systems, and you can see from system 1 and 2, you can see the type of root structure there. It's very brown, doesn't look very healthy, and if you touch it, they just break off. And then even on system 3, it's as well. So this one, I just wanted to show you that we were experiencing the same problem with all of our systems, except the one that we'd put the bottle of plasma in. And you can see there, that's the third one there. It's pretty obvious. The roots are white, vigorous. They were very strong. So there was a major difference in effects on our root structure, still sitting with the same water temperature of around 29 degrees Celsius. So that to us was a dramatic effect. And it also affected the growth of the lettuce in such a short period of time. The other observation that we had come across was on the one day it was sort of also over 30 degrees again, a very hot day. And when you can see the picture on the left, that's typically what happens to our lettuce. It wilts, it looks terrible, and by evening time it recovers and it's okay again. But what happens is when the lettuce wilts like this, it just doesn't grow. So we just have no growth during that period. Now, the lettuce on the right, we'd noticed all the lettuce that we'd planted into that trough, the system with the plasma bottle, they were all standing upright and strong. They were not affected by the sun at all. So that was quite a nice observation that we had noticed from the lettuce. So, in this condition, they're still able to grow. They were much stronger. We'd taken some out. We started harvesting. And this picture, you'll see the lettuce. These were 2 of the same type of lettuce. The one on the left, it came out of the plasma system, and the one on the right came out of one of our normal other systems. So you can see the effects that this plasma has had on the lettuce. These 2 particular lettuce out of the systems were seeded 3 days apart, so there's not much difference in the age, not to such an effect. And they both sort of represented the average size that we were harvesting. And we'd then harvested our lettuce 31 days from putting into the system. We had taken these lettuces and weighed them just to get an idea. The one on the left was out of the plasma system, and that weighed 149 grams, and the one on the right weighed 55 grams. So that just shows you a dramatic difference there in the lettuce. And the one on the right with this 55 grams is what we had been dealing with all summer. So for us to get the very heavy lettuce on the left was a very nice surprise. We had done some water testing just to see the effects, whether there would be any from what the plasma might do. The one on the left was on the 20th of February and then on the 14th of March. I tested pH, and first of all, our water temperature was 29 degrees, and on 14th of March was still 29 degrees. So it had remained at a very high temperature throughout the 4 or 5 weeks growing period. Our pH doesn't change very much. It was 6.6 and then 6.4. Our ammonia levels was only 0.5, and these are all on parts per million. And at the end of the growing period, it was 0.25. Our nitrites was 0.25 parts per million, and then we don't measure any nitrites at the end of it. And then our nitrates was 20 parts per million, and then only 5 at the end of the period. So this is the other thing to bear in mind is that I chose this system to do as a test example because out of all of them, our fish in this system was, when we got them, they've always been a very poor batch of fish. They were very lethargic. They didn't eat much. Were not active. So we were battling to get up the nutrient levels on the system all along. So I thought, well, I'll put the plasma in here and see what effects it would have. So you can see on the basic nutrient levels, there hasn't been any change over that period. The observations we had was that, as you see in the pictures before, the root structure was totally different. We only generally get that type of root structure when the water is a lot cooler during the winter months. So during the autumn and spring periods, we'll get that very nice, white, healthy root structure. But during summer with the high water temperatures, we just don't get that. And to get that root structure at 29 degrees water temperature was amazing for us. This is showing us that the plasma fields, and they were just in the water, were allowing the plants to cope better with the higher water temperatures and the higher air temperatures as well. The lettuce are producing, they were larger leaves, they were thicker, they were heavier. It was a very thicker texture. Normally the leaves are very thin, almost paper thin. These were thick. You could feel that they were very healthy lettuce and leaves. We were then able to harvest in 4 weeks instead of the usual 6 to 7 weeks during the hot summer periods. And as I say, during the day, when the lettuce generally wilts, these lettuce were very happy and standing upright. As I said, they're exhibiting traits that we normally only see during our peak growing periods of spring and autumn when the water temperature and the outside air temperature is cooler. The interesting thing was on our fish, as I said, these fish were very, very slow and quiet fish in the tank. And we'd noticed a few days after we'd added that bottle of Gans in the water that the fish started being a bit more active, because normally when I feed the fish, you just throw in some pellets on the top and you wouldn't hear them. I'd come back the next day just to have a look, and the pellets had been eaten, but you just don't see them or hear them. Now, all of a sudden, when I'm throwing food onto the water for them, they're coming to the surface and they're very active and they're eating. So we've seen quite a change in the fish there. There's been no fish deaths at all recorded, so that's been good as well. And it's effectively what we've only done is we've only used 50 mils of this Gans mixture, and we have that one system has 24,000 liters of water. So for us, we wanted to start with a very small amount to see what effects it would have. But as I say, we've been blown away with the effects, because for such a small amount of Gans in a huge volume of water, we've seen these huge effects. And it's only just the effects of the field in the water, not necessarily not adding any of the Gans itself. This was just based on those results. We just did a quick experiment where I'd then taken another one of those little bottles filled with Gans, and I put it into a barrel of water, 210 liters of water, keep the same effect. And just on this quick test, we grow micro radish, and we had watered the seed trays with this plasma water from the barrel. We'd follow the same procedures in growing that we normally do. But at the same thing, we'd emptied out these punnets, and you can see that same effect. We've had very good root structure. The two white roots in the middle there were the ones treated with the plasma, and the one roots up either side is the normal radish roots that we get. Because these only grow from seeding to harvesting in 7 days, it was a very quick turnaround. But for us, that root structure there was again more proof, of the effects of this. The radish we found was also healthier, and we were able to harvest the day earlier. So that was just a nice quick test that we had done just to confirm what we'd experienced on our bigger system. So I tried to and understand what we had done there and what was going on. What we thought was that using only the fields from the plasma bottle and using the water as the medium of these fields, we think will have enormous impacts on the agriculture around the world, because I wanted to do something where you're not using a consumable, where you're making, having to make CO2 and water it on the plants and then it's gone, and then you're having to make more CO2 again. This way, my thinking is that one can make your CO2 and somehow use it in your agricultural systems or anywhere, and you're just watering the plants with that CO2 where the fields have been introduced into that water. So you'll have your CO2 forever, in a sense, using it to water your plants. What we'll try and do in the future is determine the amount and the different types of ganses to grow the water successfully as well. We're feeling maybe we need more CO2 in our mixture, so we'll be playing around with that. The other question is, will the use of the Gans fields in the water enable us to replace all our other inputs that we normally do? It would have quite a lot of implications in the hydroponics industry, where they're always putting in chemicals as nutrients, and they might be able to just have the right combination of ganses and water their plants as per normal and grow their plants per normal. My understanding now from this is that the plants are only absorbing the fuels from the air and the water, because there's no other way. And so they're able to get their nutritional needs, sort of the minerals from our sea gans, the iron from iron gans, CO2 for the nitrogen. That's my understanding. So I think that there's a lot more that we'll be doing. We are starting a lot more experiments as well to try and confirm and do other stuff. So this was just our initial results that we've had, and yeah, we'd like your feedback. Thank you.
You hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Hey, I'm going to ask you a few things because it's good. You are showing us a totally different angle into this structure of farming. If you remember, last year this time, in this January, February, our Chinese colleagues showed us Chinese lettuce in the farming practice, where they use the CO2, very small amount, and they showed on the next line, when they were just using water, the lettuces, due to the frost, they were like a frostbite, but the ones with the CO2 were upright and normal.
Yes.
It's the same process with the heat. That
yes.
Now, with the heat, the ones which have a CO2 plasma are perfect, and the other ones with it. This goes back to understanding what we even explained in part of the teaching this past few days in private and public teaching, that the gas is independent of temperature and pressure. So it works because this is a confirmation that even the lettuce or the Chinese lettuce or the radish you grown are independent of the temperature. They absorb the energy they need. So in so many ways, you're confirming the opposite side of the cold with the heat.
Yes.
What was 2 or 3 things which I wanted to ask you? Maybe you can enlighten us. Can you go back to the picture where you put the bottle? We could have a look at this. We could see that you showed an arrow with a bottle sticking up in between the lettuces.
Yeah, I'll go there.
Stop there before you go. Just let's ask a question here. Go back to the picture.
That one?
Please. No, the one you were waiting. It's okay. Go back. Yeah. No, go further back. There is somewhere you show an arrow with a bottle sticking.
Okay, yes. That one.
No, go back. Yeah, this one.
Okay.
Yeah, here. Where the arrow is, where we're looking at, which way is the direction of the flow of the water? Going away from us or coming to us?
Coming to us.
Coming to us. Is there any difference in the lettuces downstream coming towards us compared
No, that was what was the interesting part, is that because we've got the 4 troughs all next to each other, and the water comes in here first, and then it goes to the second, third, and fourth one, and then flows back to the tank. And we've seen the same effects in all 4 troughs in terms of the withstanding the heat, the root structure. So it's identical in all 4.
Okay. What was the condition, the lettuces before the bottle from upstream?
Look, they're all upstream. I'm not understanding you.
You see, if you look at that plastic cover in the background, in the back.
Yes.
Yeah. What happened? I lost you somewhere. Let me bring you up. This is where the water is coming in and is coming towards us, and it goes to trough number 2, 3, and 4.
Yes.
The plasma bottle is somewhere in the middle. So
yes.
The water coming into the trough from the back to the front,
yes,
is not touched by the plasma, because the plasma is the Gans is further downstream.
No, you see the water is recirculating. Sorry, the water is recirculating all the time.
So it's continuously, it comes back to it because you saw with the fish.
Yes, it's a 24-hour recirculation, so it's constantly. That's why all 4 systems and everywhere just gets full of the plasma fields.
Okay, where did you get the other ones in comparison, which were grown 3 days later? Was it in another structure?
They were in another totally separate system, which is next door. They got their own fish tank, own water, so they're entirely separate.
So, that's fantastic. Can I ask you a question? Yeah. 2 things. In your summing up, you said you harvest 4 weeks, 2 weeks shorter.
Yes.
And in your harvest, you see more or less about 3 times more mass foliage.
Yes, during the summer, yes.
What does that financially mean to you as a farmer?
Oh, it's a huge for us, because we've only have so many of our grow beds, and so typically we'll be able to harvest, can only harvest 3 a week in our production cycle. And what this meant was that we were able to harvest. Well, let me put it this way: during the very nice periods, we were able to get about 32 to 35 kilograms of lettuce out of one of those troughs. When we do harvest, that's on a good time. During the summer months, sometimes we were down to about 15 kilograms that we would get out because of the high temperatures.
What is it now with this?
Now, as I say, we're probably back to the 35, 36 kilograms per trough.
So it's about double.
Yeah, yeah.
And 2 weeks shorter, if you put 4 weeks on, it gives you what? It gives you 12 weeks extra. It gives you 3 more cycles per year.
Yes, you obviously just bear in mind that our summer is our worst time. Once temperature starts cooling down, then everything starts growing normal. But the summertime is the worst time.
Yes, but what it is, the growth will carry on in the winter time with a bigger harvest.
Well, that's what I'm expecting the same, because I watched that Chinese video with the snow, and I also thought, well, during winter time we should be seeing also the same fast growth. because generally it grows slower during the middle of winter. So I'm expecting normal growth.
What does it mean financially to you as a farmer?
Oh, it has a big impact because you're able to get extra crops. You're able to recycle a lot of crops through. You're doing the same amount of effort to harvest 15 kilograms versus 35 kilograms. So all around it's a big financial benefit to me.
What would be the bank account bottom line?
Overall, I'd probably say a good 30-40% better. If it take for the whole year, probably 30-40% better based on this short period.
And you have no anything left in a way as a harmful material to clean up afterwards. Let me explain to you how it works.
Yeah.
The reason, first of all, we reported an increase in harvest up to 6 times more than normal about 5 years ago. We reported the increase in foliage by 3 to 4 times, 10 to 15 times from our experiment. But we use the land plantation, not the way you do. The plants grow totally different on land than they do in the water, in the containers than in open. What is happening, which should have not been strange to you and all of us, which we understand the plasma technology, we explain that a plasma is like a sun. It radiates its energy unconditionally all the time. So you have billions of little suns in that bottle, which they will radiate the energy for hundreds of years. You can leave that bottle, the plastic will rot, the plastic decompose, but the source of the energy will be there. One thing I advise you is change your plastic bottle once a month at least, because the energy release is huge. And as it is sun, as it is the energy, the continuous release, it does not matter to how many millions of gallons of water you will apply it. This is what happened in Fukushima. And in one container is about 400,000 liters of water. A small amount of CO2 is good enough to clean up. If you look at the report last week from Fukushima, where we saw that they were showing a little machine cleaning up 400,000 and all these tanks so rapidly, and it was a surprise how it does it. It's very simple. They collect the residue at the bottom of the tank so the top is clean. That's why you need such a little pump, and that's how the filtering system of CO2 at the end is capturing the CO2 which is collected off the Gans of the material at the bottom. So where the question was put by a colleague from Japan, how such a little company is doing such a thing with such a little machine, is because they pour the Gans on top of the tank. This is how we instructed TEPCO to do it. And then what happens, the Gans literally settles at the bottom, and all they need to do, they empty the top, they measure it, there is no radioactivity, they dump it in the sea, and all they need to do is to filter about 1 or 2 liters of carbon dioxide or CO2 gas. That's why such a small machine with the pipes are operating with the company. As I said, the energy from these bottles you put in is so huge. It will go for centuries. You can carry on and pass this form with the bottle if the bottle doesn't disintegrate to your grandchildren or great-grandchildren. This is the truth, because if the sun dies, a plasma dies. The sun is not the plasmas. So that's why you're wondering why 50 milliliter of a Gans can do 22,000 liters of the water you're carrying in the tank. It's continuous. It radiates its energy out and in a balanced way. We knew about this. We reported the agriculture side nearly 6-7 years ago. We have a document which done by a very good friend of ours in Belgium. He is an agriculturist. He's done what you do, for us. We paid for it. We bought all the systems to be tested very much like what you do, and the result is the same. What will be interesting to do is that if you increase the amount of the Gans, would that increase the harvest? The answer is yes, up to a limit. Up to a limit, you can increase, or in a way, if you put one bottle in the front and one bottle in the middle, that the circulation keeps on adding. The only thing that'll be interesting is if your fishes grow in size too.
Yeah, they probably will grow. You know, I think from aquaculture industry, this would be a great experiment to be able to see how fast the fish will grow.
I have a very bad news for you. The good news for you. Now that you've got the bottle, do you need the fish?
Yes. I thought I was going to get to that stage, yes.
Do we need to capture other animals to benefit us? Or now that we've seen the cycle, that it works in landfills from our colleagues in Mexico or Brazil, the report we have from China, there are no fishes. Why do we need to capture animals to serve us? We're now on the way to feed it without doing it.
Yes.
I had a very bad experience a couple of weeks ago. As you know, we were in the way, and last Sunday was 2 Sundays ago was the Iranian New Year, and one of our tradition is that we keep a goldfish on the table. It shows the earth and the seas, and we go to the shop and we buy goldfish to be on the table. And while I was in the shop, a woman came and said, "Excuse me, after the 13th, which is this Friday, we celebrate like as 12 days, and then on the 13th day we celebrate the end of the New Year celebration, which is this Friday, tomorrow. We clean up the Christmas table, as we call it, the New Year table. And a lot of people have a dilemma with the fish. What are we going to do with this thing? We are responsible for it." And the woman in the shop asked the guy, "Excuse me, can I bring my fish back out on the 13th because I don't want it to die?" Very, very promptly, the shopkeeper said, "You know, madam, tonight, when we close the shop tomorrow, it's the New Year in the morning, we throw all these fishes back in the sea because they are no use, we are not keeping them. So you can do the same." And it was putting a goldfish, sweetwater fish, into the Persian Gulf, in the Salt Sea. So, do we need to do these things? And do you need to capture and keep the fish tank once now you have found the floating energy?
Yes.
It's in so many ways not you only save on the cost of the fish and maintaining the fish. Maybe you need to put a couple of bottles of the gas where the fish are in that tank and carry on with the same process. It saves you on the keeping of the fish too.
Yes, so I'll be doing some experiments where I'm trying to grow then without the fish and just purely the plasma in the water. So I'll do some experiments there.
What will be interesting to see is what about if you hang CO2 gases into the atmosphere, not only in the water.
Okay.
To see if the air carries the CO2. We had some experience with farming in Belgium with the tomato people, where they were using gas fires in the greenhouses. And I said to the guy, "Why are you doing this?" He said, "Oh, the exhaust of the gas is what I don't have to buy CO2 to give to my plants at night. So
yes.
I switch on the heater and I get the CO2 and my plants stay warm and I get my CO2. So we have said now, I think you can test it to see if you hang, because you got a closed enclosure of the plastic, hang a few baskets of CO2 just over the plants in one of the greenhouses, because they're connected by water, but they're not connected by air. It's an isolated environment. So let's see if you can come back to us, and because you can do this every 30 days to show us if there's a difference in the growth. It's
all
fantastic.
right.
Thank you very much. The knowledge you bring us is fantastic. It's a reformation of how. I wonder something else. Do you know where your plants go?
Do I know?
Do you know where you sell them, who your customers are, or does it go to the supermarket?
No, we know all our customers here, so they all go to restaurants and local shops.
Ask them in a few weeks' time when you start supplying all these, if there is any change in the behavior of the customers.
Okay.
To see if he has that social structure calmness, because they receive from the plant what they were short of. Because what we eat is what we receive. It will be interesting as a social observation.
Create a happy community.
Yeah, but in a way, now with what you've done, Gans has become part of our food chain. And it's in the market, so there cannot be any objection what it's going to do. It is how it's going to change us. So one of the things is what happens if we eat the food which receives the energy. We know our colleagues in Mexico and Brazil report that they have already been eating it. Dr. Gota said he doesn't know what the feeling was about the potatoes he cultivated in Kenya. But now you're first person in a way, officially, which are marketing Gans produce harvest. And you need to see it. Thank you very much. It's a fantastic presentation. It's actually perfect to see. Please keep in touch. Get in touch with Dr. Kota, who's doing the agriculture part. Dr. Kota is an agriculturalist, economist. So maybe together we can bring a lot of knowledge for our farming section.
All right, I'll do that.
It's beautiful. This is very nice. I saw your scale presentation about a few days ago. Caroline sent it to me. He said, look at the difference. I didn't know it's you, but it's beautiful how you presented it. And it's very scientific. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks for your knowledge.
There's one similarity to your experiment, and it would be interesting to see. You already have a lot of additional growth, but what the conditions of all of these experiments are still more or less optimal. How would it be with the same experiment, the same treatments with the Gans in harsh conditions, in hot, cold, or with low water? And it would be interesting to see if how the result would be of that. For example, in growing food in a desert and in really cold environments. And I assume the result would be even greater.
We will be doing this trial in United Arab Emirates in coming weeks. We will be testing agriculture in desert. And then we report to you, because we have access in Dubai and Abu Dhabi. We literally sit on the desert, and we'll report on this, because it's something which will be done in the next few weeks. And we more or less will report back on that, unless somebody else has done it or can do it before we do.
That's nice. Maybe Dubai will be green soon.
Dubai is green. The problem is with the places like United Arab Emirates is that every plant, every tree you see has a pipeline to it. Without it, it dies. They say within 4 weeks, if the water circulation in Dubai stops, there'll be no plants in the city. Because everything has underground pipes, plastic pipes. And it's a very good indication, and a huge amount of money is spent keeping plants, keeping the city green. We're looking at it as we now operate through Dubai, as well as here in Italy and other countries. We're looking in how we can make United Arab Emirates green through the moisture of the desert. It's very amazing. Unless you don't stay in it, some of us, most of us, most probably have experienced it. During the day, it's absolutely boiling hot. And at night, when you wake up in the desert, everything is moist and wet. It's very strange. And we stayed in the desert to experience this one. And it's in the morning, everything is literally soaking wet. The tents, the car, you can't even sit on the chair, what do you call it, the cushions. So it's not the lack of water, it's the lack of being able to hold on to the water at the point when you need. Of course, you were there in the winter time, not the summertime. It's something we have to experience if it's the same during the summertime in the morning. What they say is more or less in the morning is always the dew that you receive. Would we be able to use that in absorbing the energy in feeding? Because this is the ultimate goal in places like in Africa, where they die, people are hungry because of their failure of the crop. Can we use this technology to feed them? We do, we think we can, and in the coming time, in the next few weeks, all of you who are in agriculture and would like to expand the knowledge, we put you into the universities at the Sierra Leone universities, which used to be one of the most famous, reputable agricultural universities in Africa. So you can actually do data collection and everything else